Hi, welcome back to Weatherford Daze. This is Jason and Rachel once again. We're glad you're joining us. I was absent last week, and my oldest daughter, Leia, was here, and I heard she made quite an impression. You know, she took you through the lower depths of Hades Town. So, what I have been listening to recently is Mr. Andy Serkis, the actor who portrays Gollum, who actually has a wide voice. He can do a lot of different voices. And he is reading the Silmarillion, which is the posthumously published creation of J.R.R. Tolkien. And it has a lot of the world building of Middle Earth. So the idea was it's really good. What makes world building good, quality, and something that really sticks with us? And so I said, could we come up with some things to talk about that? I think we both have seen and read enough things to really just go, oh, I like, go through the library of our minds. And I think it's an interesting subject. And if you want to go on this trip with us, awesome. So, what is your experience with worlds that are really rich, that really just went sparked you?
Well, Tolkien absolutely is the master. And he was the first world builder, I think, that I really fell in love with. But pretty much especially with fantasy,
Yeah.
it is kind of a requirement that along with a story, there's kind of like these elements that make up a story, right? You have to have your characters, you have to have your storyline, your plot, like what's going to happen in it, and then you have to have the world that it's set within. And when you're telling a fantasy story, you're building that world a lot of times from scratch. And what Tolkien did was he gave this almost brand new framework for what fantasy would be, and people have just been copying him ever since. It feels
If it
like,
works, it works. So, but
yeah,
there's world building in everything.
but
Even those ones that are based off of like a European medievalism,
mhm.
and they're like,
I
yeah,
mean,
but with magic, and they add that
yeah,
just a little spice. You're still
Arthur
cooking.
builds a world
Yeah.
that is fascinating, just, bringing in all of the wizards and stuff. C.S. Lewis builds a world with Narnia. I would
Oh,
say that
absolutely.
he is another really great one. You see the world of Harry Potter. I mean, they've got an entire theme park that's built around the world that J.K. Rowling created. That was another one that really, I feel like that was the thing that made her stories so iconic. And yeah, that really was the thing that made her world or her story so iconic. It wasn't so much about the story of Harry Potter, it was the world that she set him in that we want to keep going back to. Even if Harry's story is done, people still want to go to the world of Harry Potter. They want to drink the butterbeers. They want to see all the sights and the sounds. And you can get immersed in that because she created a world around it. Um, Thinking who else really.
Robert Jordan with Wheel of
Wheel of
Time.
Time.
But of
Hmm.
course, I think he would probably be one to say that he had studied at the metaphorical feet of J.R.R. Tolkien because
Hmm.
he just seems so him and Brandon
I will
Sanderson.
say, now I think Brandon Sanderson, I actually feel like does
He's
a better job of world building
than even
than
Robert
Robert Jordan
Jordan.
did. Because, and I may be a little controversial saying this,
Ooh, no, go ahead. This is
I feel like Robert Jordan built too intricate of a world. And
okay.
I think that mainly I don't know that he built too intricate of a world, but he built too intricate of characters. He gave us too many characters that we knew every single thing about them. He gave the entire history, the inner voice, the inner dialogue
Oh,
to so many people. I like a complex world with multiple different characters. I think that that's great. I
Yeah.
love when we have more than just one point of view in a book.
Right.
But when you literally, every single character that you introduce, you're then going to, at some point in your story, give their entire backstory and and actually the inner dialogue from them. Like, it just gets to be too much. And Robert Jordan was probably the only author I have ever read that I've gone, okay, you've gone too far.
And is it overwhelming? And you're just kind of like you're just kind of you get burned out really
It
quickly on that.
slows down his story to where you feel like you're just plodding along. And
Like the janitor shows up, and you're like, oh no, now I got to know that he was divorced, and then that
right.
he's da da da.
And I
He
mean,
can't just be
he
the
does
janitor,
weave in this stuff. There
right?
is some element of that you
Weave.
need, that actually gives, that is able to bring all of the plots and the storylines together, because he has a very complex plot going on where everything and all of these people in the end have to actually show up at the right time and work to for it to come together. It's kind of with Tolkien, when you have at the end of the Return of the King, where
Right.
you have all of these different pieces that had to actually be doing what they were doing at the exact right time in order for that one chance for it to happen, to actually happen. Because if all of those things, if anybody had not been in the place that they were at the time, they wouldn't have actually won. The ring would not have been destroyed. And that's kind of the thing with Robert Jordan. All of that stuff had to come together. But the thing is Robert Jordan didn't even complete his work.
And guess who? Guess
Brandon
guess who
Sanderson
came
did.
into because you said
Right.
he's better at that than Robert Jordan. So it's
He's the one
interesting that
that
he
ended up
swooped in at
actually
the end.
pulling all the pieces together and
That
making
is
it
hard too. You not
right.
not only are you okay. Let's talk about this for just one moment before I dovetail into something that's related to what you're talking about. So when you are inheriting, I can't say I've done that. I can tell you exactly what that's like. I can only imagine what that's like to inherit a world from somebody
Mhm.
who is tentatively passing that baton on to you. It's not like Tracy Hickman and Margaret Weiss who did Dragonlance.
Mhm.
I think, aren't they married? Hey, guys in the chat in the comments, tell me, are they married? I'm not looking it up. So I think they are. But
We'll end up putting it on the
they
screen or
met
something.
they met working for TSR, which is actually who owned the rights to Dungeons and Dragons at the time. And I'll tell you a little bit about Dragonlance later. But they
I know Dragonlance.
no, I meant why they wrote it, why they even wrote it in the first place, or what they patterned it after.
Okay.
Just kind of where it came from. But if you want to, so but anyway, with they're working side by side. They're a team. But when you have a baton passing to the next person, not only does that person have to understand how many books, 13 books.
Mhm.
There's something like 13 books worth of all that. But of course, he's a
I think Robert Jordan did 12 books and Brandon Sanderson
he
did the
did
13.
two. I think
Is
aren't
that
there 14 books? I don't know. Okay, go
okay?
figure. So, but I can only imagine what that's like. I don't want to go too deep with that, but I can only imagine what that's like to have to inherit and to understand someone's vision
Hmm.
for and do it justice and think, I hope that I am doing it justice.
But
Their
didn't
memory.
Christopher Tolkien do that with his father's works?
Right. See, Christopher Tolkien, pieced together the manuscripts and things and notes that the elder Tolkien had left behind when he passed away in 73, and
Mhm.
4 years later. So 4 years worth of work. And then we have the Silmarillion. I would say I cannot really tell. Maybe you can, but I can't really tell the difference in the source. It still
Mhm.
feels like it comes from J.R.R. Tolkien. It has the voice. It has a little bit more of an elevated tone in terms of the way that things are spoken. Like, it says thee and thou and things. I don't remember the elevated language. I think that Lord of the Rings was more, it felt more like I'm telling a story, and the other one felt more mythic and elevated. is I use that word a couple times. But anyway, so you were talking about Wheel of Time
Hmm.
and how he goes into everybody's story. That reminded me of the Game of Thrones guy, uh, George
George
R. R. Martin.
R. Martin.
He would have maybe 5, 6, maybe 8 main characters at any one time rotating and point of view, and you understood their mind, but you didn't have to know their entire history back. Some of them do get more fleshed out, but he
Mm.
didn't do, he would have a character show up and you give a little characterization to them, but you didn't like go into their history long back. There was elements of it that it would touch on, but it wasn't overwhelming.
Yeah.
It can be confusing with the names because there's lots of Johns.
And that's the thing. I mean, people like to have complexity in a book. When you have those books and you get to see like, oh my goodness, there's like 700, 800, 900 pages in this book. Like that's exciting to a, a reader because you know that that is somebody that has really fleshed out and built a world
You hope
that
that it's not
right.
empty prose, just kind of going, oh my goodness. You hope that
You go,
there's something
this is a
there.
story that I can sink my teeth into, that I can really just immerse myself in a new world. And that's, I mean, it can be intimidating for some people, sure, but that's really exciting for a lot of people. Those are the ones that become the true fans that can really dig in and fall in love with a world and figure out everything about it because of that, just how much is there.
Can you have a fantasy story or a novel or series where the world building is there, but it's only mentioned as the plot needs and only
Hmm.
at the bare minimum depth? So there's a lot that's mysterious and can be filled in.
Yeah.
So, because do you know some series that worked in or
Well, I feel like that's the way that Tolkien wrote his main books. The reason why we have, he had built all of this plot behind that you really only get as much as you actually dig into. If you don't read through the appendices, there's
ah?
only so much world that you're going to get. There's only so much history. If you don't go into his other books, you know,
You
you
can
can
still
go there,
appreciate
you
it
can
on
still
its own
appreciate it. You
merits,
can still love the world of Middle Earth and what he gave us. It just, there are layers of how much you want to dig into it. And you don't have to know all that he gave us and all that he wrote down to be able to appreciate the main plot.
right?
You can just read The Hobbit, and it's completely understandable on its own with what he gave of the world.
Right. One thing that I like and this is just, and this is not only with, and honestly, I'll tell you this: there's with the internet the way that it is, the fandoms the way that they are. There's absolutely zero excuse for this. Is consistency.
Mm.
Is now back in the day, the author may be like, well, oh, maybe I had that name, that specific character's name on a index card or on a note somewhere and they didn't get it. And the fan might come back later and go, yes, but Mr. Author, you called this person by that name. And does the publisher really remember all that stuff? But there's some people who are big into minutia and they can kind of do that. But now we have wikis, where they have every appearance by that character and all their history is there. And there's really the internet and the fandom out there can do quite a bit for you to help out with that if you would only look at that for 5 minutes.
So I would say I don't know that there's been anything that's really built a world and drawn people in since the internet got really big. Has there?
The internet getting going would be late high school for me and early
Mm.
college, and it started really kind of
Getting
growing.
going somewhat, but really becoming a big thing like in the early 2000s.
Yes,
And I don't know
early
that
to
we've
mids.
had any really complex worlds that were built since then. Like I feel like
I would
Harry
say that the
Potter is the
Brandon Sanderson
last.
stuff came out in the 2000s, did it not?
Was it?
I think so.
Okay, I was thinking that
I
he
don't think he was
was a little earlier
90s,
than
but
that.
I again,
You're
we're
probably
having a
right. You're probably
conversation.
right.
We're, correct us in the comments. Um, but there's a issue with consistency with not only in fantasy with magic systems and powers and things like that, where 1 minute you have to sacrifice a lot of life energy to lift a rock, and the next minute somebody's picking up a boulder with no trouble, and you're like, wait a minute, explain that. And that can really throw people off.
Well, okay. I'm gonna backtrack a little bit.
Cool. Yeah, this is
Just
this is good.
well, because big things, big worlds that have taken off, like the world of Divergent, Hunger Games, those are ones. Even Twilight has happened since Harry Potter. So I guess there have been some that have happened, but they haven't been quite as complex, I guess. There's
There's not a lot
still,
answered with Twilight though. There's a lot of mystery still left there that they don't want to answer. Like,
yeah.
what is the origin of the vampires? Did they don't go too deep into that. A little,
But
but
she does
at least
build her world.
Anne Rice does. She actually tells what the first vampire was and how they were formed from Interview with the Vampire.
Yeah.
But with this one, I don't remember them really with Twilight them really focusing on that because they're thematic.
See, that's the
They
thing
don't
though.
want to
She
you know
doesn't go as much into where the vampires came from. It's just kind of they've always been there. She does go a little bit more into the origin of the wolves.
yeah,
Specifically, they're not technically werewolves. The
right,
idea
kind
is
of
that there
shifters
are
maybe
werewolves.
shifting
Yeah, they're
spiritual.
spirit
Yeah,
shifters.
right,
And she very much connects that with the Native Indian tribe
right.
that Jacob Black was from. So that was, rather than having
The
werewolves, she kind of create
Quileutes or
yeah, but she there is a world building that happened there. It wasn't super complex, but it was enough that there are still people that will go and try and visit the fictional town of Forks and
okay,
yeah, in
go
Washington.
figure. Yeah.
So then they have like there's fan stuff there. You
But
have
there's some mysterious elements, and those
right.
that
But
leaves room for things to be filled in. It's a kind of a fog at the edge of the horizon,
yeah.
and
And I
then
mean,
that can
looking
be good.
at Hunger Games, there was some world building there as far as she took the history, I think, up to a certain point and then kind of gave a future history
And
of
she's
America
going
that landed
backwards
her.
too. Now she's got some prequels and then a sequel to the prequel.
Yeah.
Yeah, filling in the
But
gaps for her. Yeah,
she
that's interesting.
created I think that it almost seemed like she had a political system that she wanted to have her book based around, and she went, how did the world get to this point? So the way that she built her world was very much based off of our world turning into, she had an end in mind, I feel like, for that, which I think is a big aspect of world building, of being able to go, I need my plot, I need the world to support my plot being able to happen.
Well, it serves the story in a good world building situation. The world building supports the story. It is in service to the
Mhm.
characters. If you don't watch it, you basically have that 900-page book. Most of it's in what they call info dump. And it's just
Mhm.
like, that's not what you want. Those are ones that I think are bad
I think one of
examples.
the reasons why, see, Divergent is another one that there's this world building going on.
Right.
That she sets up and she gives this idea that the world has kind of split into these different categories, and people are split into these different categories based on these mental abilities and like these aspects, right?
Myers-Briggs. Yeah.
Right.
This
And
tribe of
you
ENTPs
have
just running through the forest being
this
nerdy,
feeling like everybody
judging people.
thinks that this is how the entire world is, which is why it actually felt like a bit of a letdown to get to the end of the series and realize that it was just an experiment with this one city. Like, that wasn't even the way that the world was functioning. So you thought that you were going into a different world, and then you kind of get jerked back into it. Was just like, this was all just basically a game that was being monitored, that they were playing on these people. It was a psychological
like the
mind
Stanford
warp. Right,
experiment or
it was an
something. Yeah.
experiment. And it, to me,
It's like Shyamalan's The Village or something. Yeah.
to me, that actually, I didn't like that. I didn't like that this world that I thought was happening, that I was fully committed to. This is a separate place. This is a world where this is happening. I had suspended my belief. I had gone along
You
with
weren't
it.
thinking this was future United States or something?
And then, well, yeah, I thought this was the way that the world had developed, and that it was because of this, these advances in being able to see the different aspects of people, and know how, their brains worked, that this was now the world
I kind
that
of
was functioning. And then
I
to
didn't read
find
the book.
out,
I watched the movies. So when I saw it, I
yeah,
went, "This is an allegory for something." I thought that it basically started that I don't know how she wrote this, but in my mind, I was going, she started with, "I want to say something. I have a message," and the
mhm.
world comes from, instead of this way, she worked from the message of what she wanted to say, a message, and
I
down.
feel like
And so
it
I went, okay, I didn't
was
take it.
almost kind of a copy of Hunger Games, right? In that Hunger Games was a very political, like, the political messaging was very, very strong in that
Right.
book. And that was kind of the point of why we're having the story, is because we have something politically to say, or socially
But I
to
took
say.
it as that.
Maybe
And
not
so
even politically
it
as so
caused me
much as
not to take it
socially.
as serious as I would something like, you know,
Mhm.
I,
But I didn't realize at first that that was what was happening in Divergent. I thought it was just a cool sci-fi, fantasy story. And then to find out all of these political undertones and stuff, and that this is actually more of a social commentary
yeah.
wrapped in a story than it is actually just a story, was a bit of a, oh, okay. I
Well,
mean,
I
there's a
didn't, well,
there's a place
in
for those
watching it, I kind of
books.
clocked that, toward the beginning. I was like, sure, this makes absolute sense that this would happen.
Does it feel like it's kind of a book for people that actually don't like reading sometimes? Like Handmaid's Tale, I feel like was a book for people who just want the social commentary and want to have the conversations. It's not that they actually really enjoy reading stories so much as they want their time invested to be. It's like
Sometimes people have
you're
something they
not
want
there
to
for the
say.
story. You're there
Yeah.
for what it's saying. And I mean,
Maybe like
there's a
later.
place for that, right?
Like, okay,
That
do
there's
you remember
good in
Ursula
that.
Le Guin? And I said that later on,
Mhm,
she was interweaving a lot of the feminist ideas.
mhm.
And if you don't watch it, if you're in service to the message instead of in service to the story, and the message can just kind of sneak in there and
Right.
almost envelop you, and you go, oh, and you feel the weight of that. But when the message comes in, it's almost like they bang you over the head with it.
Yeah.
And
Well, it's
yeah,
like
okay.
it's the same thing as I was reading some I'm in a group on Facebook of people that are just readers that enjoy stories, and somebody was commenting about Pilgrim's Progress. They were saying, okay, how do I actually enjoy Pilgrim's Progress? I love Chronicles of Narnia. I like allegories in theory, but this one I'm finding really, really difficult. And I think that that's kind of the difference,
Yes.
because Pilgrim's Progress was written as a moral story. It's meant very strongly to be an
He's
allegory. It's
not
not about
he's
the
not C.S.
story.
Lewis.
It's
C.S.
not about
Lewis can
telling a
do
good
both.
story. It's
He
about,
can do both.
right.
C.S. Lewis can walk and chew gum at the same time. So can Tolkien definitely can. But I think John Bunyan, to me,
He was a
he
preacher
had,
preaching a sermon. He wasn't
and
telling a story.
it worked on that level.
Right.
So but it's not meant to be like, oh, well, this,
Right.
and I think that he made that point pretty clear when he names his cities, and his people, the things that he does. It's kind of on the nose, and that's why I
Mhm.
like those people that where the message is underpinning it, and it's not, like I said, overbearing. Um,
Mhm.
Now, one thing I was going to mention, one problem with world building is when the right, I would say producers of TV shows really should be called out for this, and they do get called out. And is at one point there was a series called Acolyte. It's a Star Wars
Mm.
kind of Dark Jedi prequel kind of thing, and
We
the
hadn't even talked about the world of Star Wars. That's
oh
another.
well
Wow.
the thing is that became richer because of people that were interested in that world.
Mhm.
And I can tell you, I'll give you a little point about that in just a minute before we get started on that. But in the Acolyte, there is a character who is not even born yet, in terms of, because guess what, people have written about Star Wars history going way back. They filled in those gaps that George Lucas never did,
Mhm.
right? And they had and you can look and go, I can look up online and go, when was that character born? Oh, right, where? Here. He wasn't born for another 35 years. And so are they going, oh well, and then what the producers had to say, well, that's what they think. But what really happened was, and I'm like, it's because you didn't pay attention. You could have you could have named that character anything else, and we would have been like, okay, cool. But because you did that, you
Mhm.
basically knocked a Jenga block out of somebody, but they don't care. They're a lot of times I say real fan. Sorry, those are those fans that really dig into that kind of stuff, that really care about that. Then there's people who just know, oh, I like Star Wars. It has the laser swords, and then they just go with it. Um, I think what created the deeper world building is this in Star Wars is one line from A New Hope, and it's when Obi-Wan Kenobi is talking to Luke, and he says, didn't you know my father in the Clone War,
Mhm.
before? And he goes, yes, he fought with me in the Clone Wars back when, the in the Republic, when, and he's talking about times past. Now George Lucas just wanted to go, oh yeah, and he just hints at those things, and even in the scripts that came, that eventually would evolve into the movie we've seen, he has these little elements of the history of things, but he never goes into too extreme detail about that. It's only until you get episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, the prequels that came out years later, like 98, 99, 99, 2000, those when they started coming out.
Just like over 20 years from the
Wow.
first one.
They were
Yeah.
early 2000s, late 90s. I remember that. Hey, I was there. So yeah, I'm old. All right. So no, I'm kidding. But
Okay.
but that's when he started filling in those gaps of here's what happened before. But he kind of goes, and he throws out those little hints, and those are tantalizing. And that happens a lot. There's Star Wars books where there'll be a character in the background in the cantina, and there's a whole short story about them. And I'm like, that's almost
Mhm.
like Wheel of Time itis, where you focus on every little character that
But
shows up.
there's a difference.
Okay, okay, okay.
Okay, here's the
All
difference.
right, here we go.
With Wheel of Time, all of those side plots have to be read and understood in order to get to the end.
Those other things are optional.
In Star Wars, all of the sides, like, we know that there's tons of other people that are like side characters that all have a story of their own.
There's a galaxy far, far
And we
away.
can choose whether to hear their stories or not, but they're not integral to us actually getting to a satisfying ending. And like I said, it's nice when you have lots of threads that have to be pulled together,
Hmm.
but I feel like Robert Jordan took it slightly too far.
That's
Just
another
slightly too
problem people
far.
have.
Because I would
Yeah.
have liked to have had all of those side stories and stuff as like later things that could be separate, that are nice to have to fill in the world, but don't have to be there to understand the main story that we're reading.
That's one of the problems that people have had with the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Mm.
Because see, you know where I was going with this. Maybe you felt it in the force. But people, I've had people who are kind of not real big super Marvel Comics fans from way back. That's me.
Mm.
Who kind of look at it and go, well, how many hours do I have to watch to kind of get this? Because okay, so we kind of got a little bit hint of this with my daughters because they started seeing memes of Thanos and things like that and going, oh, what's this? And they started like, oh, Spider-Man. They started going, let's go back and watch those. And so they had to figure out, well, how much do we have to watch to follow the main thread of the whole universe? And as soon as they started doing the Disney Plus shows, you're like, do I have to watch Echo? Do I have to watch this little side thing, this Secret Invasion show? I heard people said it wasn't really good. Little elements. Do I have to watch Agatha? No. Can I just watch that? I like that by itself. How much do I have to know about this? About all these little Easter eggs and things going way back. So there can be a challenge to the world building, and you go, well, you have to have watched this. Well, you won't like that character unless you watch them in this, and that's overwhelming to somebody to be able to jump on. And so and I think honestly, that is causing a problem with these cinematic universes because there's too much, and there's so much. And we're running into that with these
you
new
want to
movies
have
coming
that
up.
balance. You want to be able to have lots for the super fans, but you still want your main things to be understandable to somebody that hasn't dug in and read all of that. So yeah, there's just a balance. There's a fine line there to be found. And I would say that a lot of the Marvel stuff, you don't necessarily have to have watched all the stuff in between to be able to just appreciate it. A lot of the stuff just as a movie. You can come in there and just watch the movie, and you may not understand it on the level of somebody that's watched everything else and read everything else and knows all of the Easter
There may
eggs
be
and
a
stuff,
deeper
but they're
appreciation,
still
but you can
right, but you
still.
can still appreciate it for what it is. So, and I would say most of it, there probably is some that they've gone, okay, no, you're not going to get this at all unless you know this.
Well,
But
that was the tension for
mhm,
Rings of Power people.
yeah,
Because there were people who came out instantly and when they showed the female dwarf and she had dark skin and they said, well, dwarves don't have dark skin, or they said elves don't have dark skin, and this was
they
not
didn't
made for
mind
them.
the
This
dwarf having dark skin was not a
the
problem. It was
beard
the elf.
was it?
It
She
was
didn't have a
that the
beard either.
dwarf woman should have had a beard because
At least give her mutton chops coming down, a little cute. They stop right here. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Rachel. I don't want to see my dwarf with a big long, Santa Claus beard.
I mean, and that's the thing. In the books, Gimli does say that you can't really, that like outsiders can't really tell the men from the women.
I don't know if that was a joke or not. I'm hoping it was, but I don't. But knowing Tolkien, if that was in the book, it wasn't a joke. It was a matter of fact. And
That was just who they were. That was what he created, how he envisioned them.
the only dwarves we really see are
And
the
the
12
elves are
from the
light
Hobbit,
skinned.
right? And even when they say the dark elves, it's almost like the Black Irish. They're talking about their hair, right? Was very dark, and their eyes were very dark. It wasn't their skin was dark. I'm reading, about the dark elf
Hmm.
in Silmarillion, and I was, I was like, okay, is he? Because I have all this D&D baggage, and so I'm thinking dark elves have dark skin. But anyway, um, that's the thing is, are you making this for people who've just seen the Lord of the Rings movies and the Hobbit movies, kind of that have never read the books? That's what they were made for, I think. Rings of Power was made for people that watched the movies.
I don't
That's
know.
what I think.
I think they,
Civilians.
I think they
Okay.
just
Normies. Sorry, normies.
no. Rings
That's
of
so
Power,
mean.
I think the biggest problem that they had with it was that they only got the rights to one like piece of Tolkien's works that they could actually pull from.
Right.
So they couldn't make a story with all of the information and stuff because they were limited by what they had actually bought the rights to. So that really, really hampered them. I feel like they were trying to do something with very tied hands.
Do you think the rights to the Silmarillion would have been too expensive? Because there's a lot in there they could have filled in and really
I
had.
mean,
They had
just what they
seasons upon
bought
seasons.
was crazy expensive, wasn't it? Like
Oh,
reportedly,
it was
it was
insanely expensive.
insane.
In fact, it almost looking at the money. Just as a side note, economy, economy, guys. It was so expensive. I thought it was going to tank Amazon as a company.
Hmm.
I don't know how Bezos, even paid for that. I mean, he's one of the richest people in the world, but I don't. But I'm like, oh my goodness, you paid that much, and that was even before. That was just the rights. That was not even before
And then they have
you're
to
talking about the
actually,
production. The
right?
production was like multi-million for each season. And I'm like, how much? If this were a movie, see the amount of money that takes to make these movies, you have to get people to come back to the movie theaters. People stopped going during COVID, and they kind of moved away from that a lot. And people were struck by that was really, really expensive, and it was really bad. And we fool me once, shame on me. But
Hmm.
that's people are not going to movies in what now they're measuring success based upon smaller money metrics. But um let's not talk about money. So okay,
After 5 minutes of talking about money, let's not
after
talk
yeah
about
after
money.
it's somebody else's money, so that's what interesting. We talk I can talk about other people's money all day long. So let's talk about this. We've talked about
Please get us back on track.
let's talk. Authors are world builders. The ultimate world builder is Yahweh God.
Hmm.
And we talked about what makes an author a good world builder, and and what are some pitfalls and things that they have. What makes God the greatest world builder?
Well, he was the original, for one thing.
Right? We talked about consistency in world building. There are laws to this universe, from gravity to the weak nuclear forces, strong nuclear forces. There are some places in the universe, scientists say, that the laws of physics get flipped on their head. But the thing is, in order for a law to be flipped on its head, it has to have a standard by which you measure it by. Gravity is gravity, and the laws of the universe predate the universe. You can't have a universe that expands into existence from God's word. And those things, to expand, you have to have distance,
Hmm.
right? You have to have space. We talked about space. You have to have these laws. There are people that talk about intelligent design and things like that, and say those laws had to predate the universe. And who else would you have to? In order to create a law, you have to have a lawgiver. The lawgiver is God.
Hmm.
So the consistency of that, we talk about authors that one minute magic works one way, another when they break their
Right.
own rules. God does not. God is not one of us that He lies. He is truth, and He has it all mapped out and sees the end from the beginning. Some authors, like Stephen King, don't know how to end their books for the life of them, and their endings are always not as great as we want. The ending of this book of reality is going to be awesome. And he has planned it from the beginning.
And the fact that not only did he start the universe, gave us all of these laws, he gave us objective reality, he also recorded history, like gave us the ability and made sure that it was there and that his story, that the redemption of humanity from the very beginning, where you have in the garden, you have this setup of there's an antagonist, there's there's a villain that comes into play, and then you have these hints of what's going to happen. You have these prophecies that are coming into play, that it's, you know,
The heel that would crush
right,
his
that
head, but
with
he
the
would,
serpent,
the serpent will, he'll
right,
bruise, he'll wound your,
that
yeah,
the woman's offspring, that, right,
crush the serpent's
crush the
head.
serpent's head, and that the serpent will bruise his heel. And how that then, all of these hints, all of these prophecies had this story, this lineage that we get of all of the stories that throughout history that lead to the Messiah coming.
A plan of redemption,
Right.
a plan for
And then
humankind in relationship with God.
it doesn't just end there. There's still this thing of, we're in this ongoing story, and we know just enough to know that there's this end that's coming, that there's this future where ultimately we're going to all live in this heaven on earth, in this new earth, that what is now that's been corrupted is going to be restarted and is going to be perfected. And I mean, there is no story ever written that's come close to the complexity, to the theme that was written there. It is truly the greatest story that's ever been told, is the story of Jesus, and it's ongoing, and we're all a part of it.
Yes.
And I feel like the next greatest storyteller, everybody goes, "Oh, we're all copying Tolkien." Well, I feel like Tolkien was copying God.
Especially with
He wanted to
in
create a history. He wanted to
the very
create
beginning, yeah.
something, yeah. And what he gave us in the Silmarillion, which is what you were reading that really sparked your desire to
To
do
do that,
this
yeah.
episode, was it starts off with a very poetic retelling of what God did, how God created the world. But he said it in, like I said, in this poetic setting where it's, rather than God speaking the world into being, he said it as God with this this group of celestial beings that he created, that were there with him in the beginning, that he gave them this ability to join with him in the creation and in starting it. And they sang this song.
It's like an orchestra
Right.
symphony kind of metaphor.
And all of them are just joining in. They're following after God. And then you have one who's really good, right? He's got the most talent of any of them, but he
It has a fatal flaw.
he has a fatal flaw. He has pride, and he goes, I don't want to follow after what Iluvatar, which is his Tolkien's name for God. I don't want to follow after what Iluvatar is doing here. I want to I want to do my own thing. I want to be the one that's creating and controlling this creation. And so he brings in his own theme that causes conflict. And then Iluvatar, after kind of letting this go for a little bit and seeing the others that are getting pulled into Melkor's
Yeah.
theme, which Melkor is the one that introduces his own, he introduces another theme into it. And it's kind of correcting, it's fixing, it's pulling them, the ones that have been led astray, back into what his original purpose was and his original plan. And then, another Melkor.
Doesn't that mirror what God did in
Mhm.
history? The other theme that he wove in was, there is none other that can redeem and pay the debt than if I step down in the form of Jesus Christ in this earth, divinity wearing flesh, take on the ultimate penalty, pay that to bring back
But
the
see,
fallen into
the
the
thing
fold.
is even though there's a lot of parallels
Yeah.
between how Tolkien wrote this in the beginning of, Iluvatar creating and then, someone trying to subvert the creation, it's not allegorical. It's not an exact
Well, it's
parallel.
not
It
one to
doesn't
one.
work. Yeah, it's
It
not one to
there's
one
hints
because
of it.
Tolkien was creating a new world and a new history. He wasn't simply retelling ours,
No.
he was creating a new. And so, it doesn't work exactly, but there's a lot of beauty in the way that he told it and the way that he built this world and in the way that it did copy the creation
Or
and the
homage.
fall. And yeah, it really was an homage.
Or an inspiration.
Mhm.
And I hope that we inspire you to create worlds to, even if, from, if you create it in your imagination or just with your children. I experience imagined worlds in Dungeons and Dragons that I play with my son and my daughters every 2 weeks. And we have been going through that for at least 2 years, 2.5 years, something like that.
It's been over 3 years,
It's
I
been over
think.
3. And the world that we started playing in, we inherited from way back. And so there are things of the history that I don't know a lot about, and it's constantly evolving and as it goes. And I think that that's a place for creativity to abound. But we're creating our own world, not this world, but you're creating the world that surrounds you. What kind of world are you going to create for yourself? Is it going to be a
I
world of
think that's
positivity?
that's what I was going to say is kind of as we're looking and appreciating how some of the greatest authors built these worlds and the complexity that they wove in there and what really makes it good, right? Whereas some that go a little too far and, lose the plot a little bit, and those that just get it so good, so right.
Right.
But I think that it can also inspire us to look at our own lives as a story, as something that's a part of a greater story. Because when we look at our history, the history of our world as being a story that God is writing and that He's telling, then we see that we're of those, we're one of those subplots. But God gives us the ability through our own free will to be in charge of what's going to happen in a lot of ways in our own story. We're not just, mindless being written according to, you know, we like to throw around the word NOP, need a plot.
Right.
We're not just at the whim of an author. We're getting to participate and be a part of what our story is going to be when we follow after the way that God has revealed to us that's the right way to live.
Right.
Those guidelines, those safeguards that He gives us, then we have a life that's full of a lot of peace and tranquility that comes from just not having to face the consequences of our own actions, right?
Well, I used to tell the kids, I said, people have this wish that they said, I want to change the world. And that's a very noble thing to say. I only know of one individual that really did it. We've mentioned this individual. See if you can guess who it is. No, it's Jesus. So, but what are you going to do with your 100-foot radius? That's my thing. Is how are you
Mhm.
going to what's your world like? What that's the world, 100-foot radius. And are if you've come into contact with somebody, are you going to show forth the love of Christ? Are you going to, and we're going to make mistakes, you're right? But that's free will. You have the free will
Thing
to
is,
make mistakes
too,
too.
just like those really good authors, God is a really good author. Just like those really good authors are able to take all of these small pieces and make them work in the end where they're woven together. God weaves in our stories to where we may not feel like we're changing the world with the little everyday things that we're doing, but you really never do know how much of an impact your life is going to have in history. I'm sure a lot of people that are out there that we all know their names didn't know just by living their lives that
Right.
they were going to have a change,
You can't know it
either
while
for
you're
good
in it.
or ill.
Some people have died penniless, not knowing
Yeah.
that their art has changed the hearts of people throughout it, throughout the ages.
All they were trying to do was just to live their lives. And when they lived it in a selfish way, only caring about themselves, a lot of times they impacted history very negatively. When they lived their lives selflessly, you've got Mother Teresa, you've got so many people that just all they were trying to do was just give, was just to model their lives after Jesus. They were trying to just do good and love other people. And they ended up changing the world for the better.
I agree. So, what are you going to do this week that changes the world? Are you going to show love and show peace and show joy to others? We're going to try. We might mess up, but we'll give it a shot. Do a little world building from day to day. From our world to yours. We hope you had a great
This was Jason
great
and
episode.
Rachel, geeking out about books and ending up preaching a sermon instead. Whoops.
You know what? That's a pretty good nutshell to put a whole podcast in. Is that just happens all the time. But we're glad you spent some time with us today, and we hope you enjoyed yourself as much as we did. And we'll see you next time. Hope we'll have something really, really good to talk about. We always do.